What's going on, guys? Check it out. Welcome to the Funhouse. Today we're going to be creating this cover for a steam radiator. If you guys are familiar with New York City, most of the buildings over there were built pre-World War I. They use steam in order to heat their apartments. So today we're going to build this cover using plywood and dimensional lumber in order to cover it and give it multi-purpose. Let's go. So check it out, guys. I designed this project over on SketchUp in order to get a visual on what we were going to be creating. Taking the measurements obtained from the radiator on site, I transferred those over to my reference printout before making the cut lines on the stock. So I think I got the measurements right. I took it when we were there, but measured twice, cut once, I guess. Anyways, para meter la pata, tú sabes. Kind of not shooting from the hip. You can do this over SketchUp as well to make it pretty, but I decided to do it by hand just in case I needed to adjust it later on. So here I pre-planned my cut lines in order to make it a whole lot easier when bringing it over to the table saw and cutting the boards down to length. All right, so for the tabletop, trying to have over here, well, not the tabletop, I guess, the top of the radiator cover, these two boards right here, I got them measured at 14 inches, but I'm probably gonna use a 2x8. Yeah, 2x8, two 2x8s. Roughly, that'll give you, I think they're like, what, like 7 inches and a quarter, I think, without the squared edges over here. Yeah, 2 inches and a quarter roughly. I mean 2 inches, wow, excuse me. 7 inches and a quarter roughly. So I'm gonna I'll mark those at 14 inches. What we're gonna do is take it to the table saw, cut off these edges and make them 90 degrees, even though this not flat, but that's fine. We'll take it to the planer or just sand it down a little bit. Doesn't matter, it's gonna give it like that rustic look. That's what we're going for. So once we get these edges all squared, butt them together, and we should have our tabletop of 14 inches roughly. Doesn't matter, as long as it has like a little overhang over it. I think the client's gonna be pleased with that, and that's about it. I did not have a full table saw setup, so I took Steve Ramsey's advice and cut the plywood on the ground to make it manageable for the table saw. I also used the speed square in order to make sure that my table saw blade was squared. For the miter cuts, I used a digital angle finder from Clean. It's a handy little tool as long as you zero it to the surface of the table saw to get an accurate reading. I use it to get a 45-degree angle on the blade relative to the surface of the table saw. You can also use a speed square to achieve the same thing. At the last minute, I decided to miter the corners where the side panels meet the front panel to give it a cleaner look. Once I cut the 2x8s to size, I ripped one edge on each board to make them square so we can join them together. Once all the boards were cut, we're off to the races. I held the boards with masking tape to create a hinge and applied the glue in between the joint. Then I checked to make sure that everything was squared and pushed some brad nails to hold it in place while the glue dried. And staying consistent with the clean look, I went with pocket holes. If you don't have a pocket hole jig, you can use dowels, wood glue, and I think it'll work just fine. But I think it'll be much easier with pocket holes in order to join everything together, in my opinion. I did a poor job with the brad nailer and some of the nails protruded on the other side. I cut the excess with cutters and used a punch in order to hammer them into the grain. We can cover all the gaps and all the holes left by the brad nailer with some wood filler. While we wait for the wood filler to dry, I turn my attention to the tabletop. After joining the two boards with pocket screws and wood glue, I trimmed off the excess to bring it down to the final dimension. Then I sanded with 80, 120, and 220 grit sandpaper to prep it for stain. I used a combination of 1 1/4 inch and 1 1/2 inch pocket screws because I did not properly set the drill bit. For 3/4 inch plywood, it is recommended to use 1 1/4 inch fasteners. When setting up the drill bit, you are supposed to measure the depth from where the blades start, not from the pilot hole tip. A mistake easily avoidable if I would have read the instructions. Off camera, I used 1/8 of an inch plywood in order to make these strips. Once I had the center line, I went ahead and applied some wood glue and laid them down. After some touch-up work, we are ready for stain. For this build, I used dark walnut for the top, simply using a clean rag and applied it evenly throughout the surface and the sides. I gave the base a light sanding and applied 2 coats of matte black paint for the entire base. Once the stain dried overnight, I applied 3 coats of rub-on polyurethane. It doesn't give it a whole lot of shine, but it works well. I like it. I went ahead with more pocket holes in order to join the top to the base, properly setting the drill bit this time. Since the radiator has a control valve on the bottom left, I had to cut out an opening for it. I should have done this before putting it all together. Minor oversight that the jigsaw was able to correct. I pre-drilled 2 pilot holes for the jigsaw blade and made the cuts. Not perfect, but minor unseen details. I squared the top onto the base and drove in the pocket screws. Applied a little bit of touch-up paint and this project is a wrap. So there it is, guys. That was the build. Let me know what you would have done different. Leave it in the comments down below. There were plenty of lessons to be learned during this project. One thing being, make sure that you read the instructions when using tools. Overall, it was an awesome project. I had a lot of fun putting it together. Some of the tips that I used was from Steve Ramsey. I'll leave a link down to his channel in the description below. I have more information on my website, thefunhouse.com, with a list of materials that I use and a brief description of how I put the build together. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if that's how you feel. I got some other projects in mind, waiting for the planer to come in order to get that project started. Stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.